Hello everyone, I am Den. You probably never seen me on this YouTube channel, and you can see at the screen that I'm not a professional in this. I usually write, but today we have a special guest, and to me it was really important that we cover these kind of events. I don't know if a lot of people will care about it, but I personally think it's a milestone in Marvel Snap, and it was important to talk about it. So who's with me today? Lowell is with me. How you doing?
Hi Dan, thanks for having me. I'm doing great actually. The week has been pretty good. Like yesterday was celebration of my birthday, and it
Happy
was just
birthday!
after the announcement and everything. Thank you so much. I'm officially like part of the 30-year-old boomer club.
Oh, welcome. It's a great club. They
Yeah.
call it the Money Club. All right. So why do we have Lowell today? Because as you can see, with the jersey that he's wearing, Lowell has recently joined Alliance as a Marvel Snap player, becoming officially the first ever Marvel Snap player signed to an organization. So little disclaimer. I think you have worked with Alliance in the past.
No, we wanted to, but we didn't. So I was formerly, and I realized, around the announcement how long it's been, but back in my days, I retired from competitive professional play in MOBA games. Actually,
Okay.
more than 7 years ago now. And around a year before retirement, I got to meet with Alliance in China. Actually, like at the tournament, like they were there for Dota, we were there for Heroes of the Storm, and we just hanged out in the lobby, talked a lot, got to know each other. So Alliance management and myself and my team. And we just hit it off very well. And from there on, it was always a thing like we knew we wanted to work together somehow at some point. It did not make sense in Heroes, neither for them or for us. So yeah, here we are 7 years later.
Okay. A very, very long deal in the making. Okay, so let's dive into the discussion, and I think the first thing is probably one of the reactions I saw the most amongst the community. I think the competitive scene, the players who actually have their goal set on playing Marvel Snap competitively, they saw this as kind of the start of a dream come true. I saw a lot of retweets, a lot of people saying, this is insane, we finally have teams, this is everything. But maybe the more casual audience, the people would consider Marvel Snap like kind of a distraction, more of a little game that you play on the side. They had more mixed feelings about it. And the biggest question I saw is, why would such a big organization as Alliance come into such a new game that is Marvel Snap?
Well, the criticism is fair, right? Because at this point, competitive is like a really big word, right?
Yes. And a lot of people
Because
think it doesn't exist in Marvel Snap for real.
well, that's the thing. It's like uh, as long as you can match one person against another, there will always be like some measure of competitiveness, and
Of
like there
course.
will be like competitive modes and so on. Like people will push it because it's in human nature, I guess. Um, but like yeah, we don't have huge competitions. We don't have like a lot of visibility. We don't have a lot of just prizes as a whole and so on. Yet, like that's the thing. The keyword is yet. Will we ever get them? We don't know. Like no one knows. Like maybe the game and the competitive scene will remain at like a baby stage forever, and will just never grow from there, and it will and Marvel Snap will remain a casual distraction, as you were saying. But that's the thing. It's maybe it won't. Maybe it will grow. The way I feel, the way many people feel, like both, like this is both within Alliance management and other organizations that I got to talk with, is the game has potential, right? And it's not a word. I'm trying to really not use the word lightly because I feel like it's thrown around every time a game comes out. But this one, many people feel is special because just of how many people it managed to bring from so many different genres. It's one of those situations where you suddenly know people, even like in everyday professional life, whatever, who are absolutely not gamers and tell you about Marvel Snap. And when that starts happening, like, and to me it started around October last year when there was global release, because I didn't even know about the game before that. But when that happened, I was like, okay, there's something special about this. Like, I started playing, the game felt good. So many people around me were doing the same. And yeah, it just has appeal. So anything that has enough appeal to attract players has potential. Now it has to be able to retain them, which is another topic, and hopefully, some of the issues with Snap, notably around card acquisition, will be fixed over time, because that is necessary. And there needs to be a want for a competitive scene. We don't know if there will be one. Except from like grassroots stuff, but even if it's just grassroots stuff with enough people behind it, it can grow huge. So we'll see. And why would Alliance get into it? Hope and a bet, like at the end of the day, it's
a bold move.
I mean, yeah, but someone needs to do it, right? And
right.
That was like
I completely agree. You need a first. Like, you need someone to step in and say, okay, we're doing this first, follow us.
Exactly. And like, to me, that was the whole goal. Like, and that's why I was so happy when I approached them about it, that the response was so positive. Because if no one does it, like, we're
there's zero
like
chance.
The status quo. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So here it was, I felt like I approached them, and like in complete transparency, right? Because unlike many other people on the scene right now, I'm not even like a competitive CCG player, right? Like,
okay.
So my approach to everything in life is brutal honesty. So literally, I approach them, telling them, look, I've been doing okay. The few like tournaments I participated in, like, I've been doing good. I believe I can do great. Okay, like, the thing is, also, when we were having those talks, and still now, I was still finishing law school full-time plus working full-time, so I had like a 200% job. So
where is Marvel Snap in that life? How do you fit anything more in that life?
I don't sleep much.
Okay.
But that was the thing, like, I told them, if we do this, and there are results to come from me, it probably won't be before, the summer. So that's why we're doing like the announcement closer, to Manchester, like the UK Creator Clash event that I'm participating in, and a few other tournaments that we cannot necessarily talk about yet that are happening over the summer. But even then, I wasn't sure that I like doing the Avengers analogy, right? And I really wasn't sure I was capable of being Thor, right? Because I've competed, I believe I was the best in the world at what I did, in completely different genres. So will this work? I don't know. But if I'm not Thor, I'm Nick Fury.
Pretty good.
And I have like, I have good gut feeling for people. I'm a people's person. If I'm not the best player, if I'm not world champion material, I'm going to give you a world champion material team. Yeah. Like, that was my goal. And like, so technically, I saw myself as a safe bet.
Okay.
And obviously, Alliance agreed. And here we are. Like,
okay,
with a lot of hopes and a lot of goals and things we want to do to keep growing the game. And hopefully, like, it will pay off. But for now,
that's a great story. And as you mentioned, like the summer and delaying the announcement, it also comes pretty close to the conquest mode joining the game. Is it something that was part of the strategy? Like, do you believe conquest mode is actually a big step towards competitive Marvel Snap, or is it more of two events that are close but not related?
It's a happy little accident, honestly.
Okay.
Like, it was like the fact that conquest mode was coming now was not part of the whole, like, when do we announce things plan. Do I believe it's huge for competitive Snap? Yeah, that I do.
That's good.
Simply because, like, I mean, as you know, just random ladder games, like one match versus battle mode, they have nothing You know, like it's the same platform, right? But it almost not the same game. So I just believe it will give an opportunity to everyone to experience what, for now at least, has been the competitive way to play Marvel Snap.
Yes.
And for many people, including myself, who don't necessarily have a lot of time to, you know, I told you about my schedule thus far. It's hard to just organize scrims here and there.
Of course.
But it's very easy to just jump into a game and like auto queue when you have randomly like 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, that's literally how Marvel Snap labeled the game when it first came out. Like, that's the whole marketing plan here.
And this way, it will give you the opportunity to do like those random 20-minute battle modes, you know, because it takes more than just a one game, whenever you can. And it will give a lot of practice overall, like to everyone. So I do believe like the level will skyrocket from that. And I'm really curious to see what July is going to look like after a month of it.
Okay, so that's great. So you talked a lot about what Alliance and yourself see in Marvel Snap, how the game is able and probably will grow in the second part of this year. Now, can we ask the reverse question? Like, what can those big organizations with experience with esports team in the past, what can they bring to Marvel Snap? Like, is it going to make the game grow faster? Is it going to make the game like more popular? Is Second Dinner a part of it? Like, how what does he mean for the game?
So first, like Second Dinner is not part of it.
Okay.
Please, not at this stage. You can reach out.
We'll leave an email in the description.
But okay, so multiple things. I feel like more eyes, you know, like because we're reaching this stage where I don't want to talk about stagnation without seeing numbers, right? It's very hard to have like access to real numbers of players and so on. But I feel like most of the sources to attract players that were available have been tapped into. So now the more newer sources of eyes you can get, the better, right? So like we saw this as being one. The biggest hope is that we're just the first of many, right? Like that other orgs and even just, you know, players or anyone really, that's just people, but I was thinking about orgs mostly, from seeing this, decide to take the bet, you know, because...
That's exactly my next question. So that's perfect, because we have this big announcement that kind of fell off a little bit, like in the middle of the community. May was a packed month for Marvel Snap, like OTAs, two of the biggest cards in the history of the game in High Evolutionary and Iron Lad coming in, Conquest mode in June, lots of announcements, and then this. And your announcement kind of fell like in the middle of this, and maybe I missed it, but I looked for it. I haven't seen any other announcement. Like, I haven't seen other organization announce a player. I haven't seen Alliance announce other players either. Mm-hmm. So, are we looking at just a one-time thing? Is it the start of a process? Basically, Marvel Snap is a solo game. So, a team could just pick up one player and be like, all right, it's you, and that's all. But you mentioned teams. You mentioned the need to scout. I think you used the word scout other players, manage other players. So is it a project that is supposed to grow in the future, or is it more one signing for a one-person game?
Well, it's hard to give a definitive answer to that, right? Because first, I'm not... like, neither myself nor Alliance are entirely in control of the situation, because a lot of it depends on the growth of the game.
Of course.
Because ultimately, it does remain a business decision.
Evidently.
And if there's no game, if there's no competitive scene, then you don't bring more people in.
Yeah.
But if through multiple actions and things that we have planned, both within Alliance and just among players, we hope the visibility will come over time and that it will make sense. And the thing is, everything competitive I had done before was in a team setting. So I do value like the team approach a lot. because I feel like first things are tasteless if you're just doing them on your own. Like that's my opinion. And while it's a single player game, for example, ahead of the last Frame Break tournament in Switzerland, we had a bootcamp at my place with Kawa and Moyan. And we were not playing the tournament as a team because, again, single player game. But the fact of preparing together, I believe, is huge. The fact of practicing together is huge. Just having multiple people to solve problems. And when you're approaching a tournament, and these are things that are also new to me because they're very card game specific, like deck selection and so on. But you're approaching a tournament, you have to identify like what are the problems to solve. So what do you expect the field to be, right? Like what are the strongest decks? Do we believe most people are bringing those? Yes, no. Once that is done, it's like how do you solve the problem? Like what are the decks that answer those like juggernauts? And once you've done that, you still have, to go further and like, okay, and if we identified that, what did other people identify? Like, are we all in the end bringing lineups that counter this and that, and then we're weak to everything else? Just having 3 people thinking about every set of questions to answer. So like both the problem, the solutions, and how do you try to beat both the problem and the solutions just helps. Like because we have
more
different
brain
ways to
power.
approach. Yeah, more brain power, different approaches to problem solving, different levels of creativity as well, or risk taking, I guess. And then you may end up weak against Deathwave because you didn't really think anyone would bring it.
3 people are not enough for Deathwave. You heard it here, people. That's why they nerfed it. They were like, wait, they had 3 of the best and they still lost? Okay, deck is way too strong. Just nerf it. It's like, we can deal with it.
Moyan still believes we were favored into the matchup.
Yeah. Okay, but thanks a lot. There was a lot of explanations on why teams are important. So now let's focus a little bit more on you as a player. And I think this is the question I have seen the most. When I went to other people and told them, hey, I'm doing an interview with Lowell, first player, signed to an organ, etc. What do you think I should ask him? This is the question I think almost everyone told me. And it was, how does one convince a big organization to put money into Marvel Snap?
Okay. Well, that's the thing. Like, here, my answer would be the same that I gave you
a little bit in presentation,
earlier.
I guess.
It's brutal honesty, right? Like, and it's very complicated as well because generally, like, those are things you acquire with experience, right? So either people are very young or never really had the opportunity to compete before at like a top tier org level, kind of. But when you do over time, you kind of know what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, which are valuable, and which can actually be problematic. So when you identify that you have no real problems from an org point of view, and that you have things you can bring of value to them, then you've won, Then you just be honest, you approach, you dare, right? Like, first thing is like to dare, and you go for it. Like, you just tell what you think you can bring to the table, tell what you would need from them, and let's go. Like, either it's a match or it's not. But
okay, that's a really good answer, I think. Like, you just go in there, tell your project, they like it or they don't.
I mean, like, that's originally my professional career in MOBA had started because we had so we were playing Heroes of the Storm, yeah, and we had heard of like an invitational tournament happening at BlizzCon that was sort of like to announce the game. We had like the best team in the beta, and we just started emailing orgs, like literally.
Yeah,
because we assumed they were getting invitations because they were like the most visible for Activision Blizzard back then. And we got positive answers. It was like, okay, let's do this. And that's how it starts.
That's really
it's like,
good.
You there.
Okay. And another more like personal question. So we already discussed this already, which is the competitive scene for Marvel Snap right now is growing, if like at best, I guess. Like if we would compare it to a Hearthstone, to a Magic, to a Yu-Gi-Oh, we're nowhere near these games yet, and it's completely normal. Like we're talking about a 1-year game against Magic, which is like 25 years, and Hearthstone was 9, 8, 9. So it's completely normal. I think a lot of people want to compete with these games. It's just impossible in the time frame we had. So Marvel Snap is growing, and as such, it's hard to imagine someone can make a living out of just playing Marvel Snap. Most of the competitive players, I can think of Moyen, Lambi Series, Kawatek, Broad, all of these people, they're doing content or they have a job on the side. You mentioned like you just finished low school, so that's probably where you get your money, I'm assuming. So if we put it this way, what does it mean to be a competitive player right now?
Okay. I would say the biggest thing is like in every other competitive setting, it's the will to win, right? It's like,
of course,
you want to be the best at what you're doing. Right now, like if I try to understand the question, I don't think anyone can seriously look at it and believe that at this current time it is like a viable full-time path, right?
Okay.
Like because I mean, if you do other things such as content creation and so on, which is ideal if you want to full-time a card game, I believe, then it might, like it might pay off enough. It's like I don't discuss accounting with the other players. So I'm not exactly sure.
You guys don't have meetings at the end of the month? Like, all right, who made what this month?
Unionize. But no, so I don't discuss that, so I'm not exactly sure. But I think it's important to see that if the goal is sort of to turn it into a full-time source of income that will be, sufficient, you need to look mid-long term, and you can't. I feel like it's too risky to look at it right now with still the risks that we discussed, that it might never grow despite everyone's best efforts, like competitively. You can't put all your eggs in that basket just yet. So I think right now being competitive is just being the best player you can be.
Okay, that's already a pretty lofty goal, to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, and a little bit of a follow-up to this is, I don't think we have an official statement on it, but reading the Discords, what has been said in the community, for now, Second Dinner doesn't seem to have intentions of like bringing a competitive circuit, announcing a world tour or anything. I mean, for now we have tournaments. I think it's like 3 main like platform. We have community gaming, Rally Cry, I think, had a tournament very recently. Other platforms are hosting their tournaments and that kind of thing. So for now, as you mentioned, it's almost 100% grassroots. Is like the intention, so if maybe it's easier if I ask it this way. So if you could go to your dream scenario, like literally Lowell decides what happens for Marvel Snap in the future, and if you look at what you realistically can expect, what are the 2 scenarios? Are they really close? Are there big differences? Like, can you get us through both scenarios? Like, what's the dream and what's probably what's gonna happen in your opinion?
Like both the dream and what's going to happen, in my opinion, end up being the same with like two variants.
Oh.
Ultimately, I believe that having just a yearly circuit is good just for stability, because it also, like, both from a player perspective, an org perspective, even a viewer perspective. So, because you know more or less what you can expect at least for the next like 12 months, right?
Okay, yeah.
So, in my opinion, that is ideal. Now, the whole topic of should it be run by a developer or publisher, or should it be run by the community? Totally different topic, super hard to get into. Like, actually, my master thesis was about intellectual property and esports. So it's, you know, we could talk about it for 6 or 7 hours, and there are pros and cons to both.
Yeah,
I can take a position.
Okay, I definitely understand. And probably like the last question before we go back to more joyful topics. If we look at the card game environment, we're looking big picture. Hearthstone cut back on spendings this year. Runeterra cut back on spending this year. Magic cut back on online spendings this year. It seems like when we look at competition, the physical card games are doing much better. Like I'll look at One Piece, for example, which is about as old as Marvel Snap, if we look at it. Maybe a little older if we look back at the Japan days. But in Europe, both games started very recently. And One Piece, if we're talking pure competition, is incredible for a one-year game. Like, they have regionals all across Europe. They're filling 250 tournaments in like 30 minutes. I think they already had more than 1,000 people in a tournament in Asia. The game is incredible. Can we expect that kind of level for a digital card game when the other digital card games are telling us it's not that good of an idea to invest?
Yeah, because I think those are two very different problems. I think what's happening with the cut on spendings in games is more telling of, you know, sort of like the complicated financial situation that esports and online games have been in for the past year and a half or so, and like bubbles bursting.
COVID people.
Yeah. So I think that's more a reflection of that rather than, you know, the popularity of it.
Okay.
Now, personally, I believe that the physical card games doing so well is kind of a community thing as well, right? Because everyone, like most people I know who are into physical card games, they may have one favorite, but they play them all. So you just have like people who are, let's say, super passionate about Flesh and Blood or Magic, I don't know. One Piece comes out. Game looks amazing, by the way. Like, I wish there was a digital version. Game comes out, they pick up a deck, they build a few things, tournaments open, let's go. You know, like, they bring their friends and they're playing Magic, but it's One Piece. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, which it's not as transferable. It could be as transferable for digital card games, but I don't know. Generally, people like tend to focus more on one, especially if they're like competitive in that. Generally, they are creating content around it as well for most like CCG pros, right? And they might be afraid of losing viewership, losing part of their community. So you end up. So when there's a new digital game coming out, you mostly end up with like new people coming onto the scene and competing and creating content rather than people transferring, because transfer is a risk. Meanwhile, for physical, I see many people like basically do a bit of everything. And I think that's the difference, but no expert, just my hot opinion.
And that's actually a great transition, because if I look at the Marvel Snap scene, personally, coming from Hearthstone and having played Runeterra and a little bit of Gwent in the past, I honestly knew most of the names already. Like, Moyen, Lambi series are Hearthstone. We have a lot of the Korean community I think I saw their names in Shadowverse. A lot of people are coming from other card games. You're one of the few who comes from a completely different background, as you said. Is Marvel Snap your first card game?
Yeah, I mean, I played a little bit of Gwent because when it was coming out, I was really into the Witcher universe. I played a few games of Hearthstone after I retired from Heroes, and I was questioning my life for 2 weeks. So
A lot of people
Face
do
Hunter,
that.
by the way, like Face Hunter all day.
It answers a lot of questions.
But yeah, that's
Okay, but like, I think it's
why am
cool.
I like sorry, I kind of lost track of the
No,
question. Like when I
basically, what I was trying to say is you also kind of represent the Marvel Snap players, but like the players who did not come for yet another card game. Like because there's a lot of what I heard, and I come from Hearthstone. Like I've done that transition a lot. Like with the announcements from other games, there's a lot of people that just changed game and just went to the more profitable in a way. Like, oh, I'm not gonna make money onto Hearthstone anymore. Let's give a try to this. For you, it was a completely different thinking because you were not like, if you don't play card games, your life doesn't stop. Mine does. So I think it's really cool that you represent kind of the Marvel Snap pure players. We're not talking about card game players. We're talking about I came in for Marvel Snap as just Marvel Snap.
Yeah, like actually, if that's one thing I can really truthfully say about myself on this is the only reason I'm here is I love the game. Like I touched it, I got hooked. There was no reason for me to be, like I wasn't like super passionate about card games. As you say, it's like it wasn't my career or anything. But literally, I was drowned in advertisements
Yes,
for the game.
They were really good at this.
It was insane. And to the point, like, I cracked at some point. I was like,
okay, I'll try your game.
It's been 4 days of non-stop advertisements. I'm going to the bathroom. Well, like, I'll download your game. And that was it. Like, I really just got hooked. The game
That's
was
great.
super cool in every aspect. Like, and I think what's super interesting to see is even from like non-pure gamer perspectives. So my partner, she's an artist, right? But when she touched the game, she was also kind of hooked, just because everything works. It's not just like the cards being sort of intuitive, gameplay being intuitive, everything being very readable, but everything works. Like the art is beautiful, appealing, like music always makes sense, like every single aspect like clicks. And that's also why I think it just manages to gather people from so many different genres.
And I think that's honestly a perfect conclusion. Like, why is all this big project starting around Marvel Snap? I guess that's the perfect answer. Because the game is that good. Because people are loving the game and they want it to grow. So on that note, do you have anyone like you want, or any org? I mean, wink, wink. That you want to shout out? That like basically the stage is yours.
Okay. Well, a huge shout out to Alliance. Obviously, like, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm gonna do good, guys. We're gonna do cool things. Otherwise, like, thank you then for having me.
It's a pleasure. I think it's
all
an
the-
important event, and we had to cover it.
Thank you so much. And also, like, thanks to all the people who have been helping me thus far as well. Like, because a lot of concepts are really new to me and very specific to card game competition. We talked about it at Frame Break, but things like variance, super difficult as a competitor, if you're not practiced and used to it, because I come from genres where if I lose, if I fail, it's on me, right? Like here I need to accept that there's a degree of a percentage of what I can control and what I can do, and the rest is out of my hands. So I just need to maximize what I can do. And those are things that mentally were really challenging at first, and you know, players like Lambi, players like Moyan, they've helped me a lot on that. Super thankful. So thanks a lot to everyone who gave me assistance thus far. And Kawa Tech, who's helped me a lot as well, because I restarted streaming. 30-year-old crisis, so you start streaming.
Okay, where do people find you?
So you can find me at twitch.tv/Lowell, Lowell. And Kawa Tech basically, like, he took my hand and he was like, okay, let's do this. Because for me, it's something I thought I was going to do, but probably after exams, so from July onwards, because it was going to take me, I'm a boomer, bad with technology, everything you want, so it was going to take me a long time. And Kawatek took me by the hand. He was like, no, we're doing this, like, this is how we do it, and so on. So thank you so much to all of you guys, everyone who helped.
A support system is really important in card games, especially for what you said. Like, there's a sense of variance, there are things we can't control, and friends help us deal with it immensely. Well, thanks a ton for joining us, Lowell. I don't know if I'll be doing more of these interviews in the future, if incredible events, because I consider like the first ever signing of a pro player to be an incredible event. I'm not going to interview all the pro players, especially if a lot of signings start happening and the game blows up, because unfortunately, I hope I won't have the time for that, hopefully. But the first one, I think, was something to get on, and thanks a lot for touching these little different topics. We could have touched to also like pure competition. Are there tournaments planned, like you mentioned, Creator Clash end of the month in Manchester? But yeah, thanks a lot for talking more about the global aspect of Marvel Snap and like the org side of things also, because I think that this is important. This is a part of a game that a lot of people don't necessarily understand, is that a game obviously needs millions of players. That's the basic. That's in the end, that's what we call a scalable product. You try to sell to as many people and they bring in money. But for a lot of the content creators, unfortunately, that's not enough. Like, we need an ecosystem, we need a community, we need a support system as well. And for us, this is how it happens. This is through orgs, this is through having players that dedicate their life to the game, and these events are incredibly important in creating that ecosystem that maybe some people will absolutely never hear about in their entire life. They're gonna play a game for 10 years and they're never gonna hear about it, but others are gonna have their life changed because of one little single event. For example, teams join Marvel Snap.
We hope.
So bye everyone, thanks a lot. If you liked it, make sure to leave a comment, let me know, and hopefully more occasions to do this will arise in the future. Lowell, do you have a last word?
Thank you. Like, that's all I can say. Like, thank you, and I hope this is just the beginning of a lot of other things and good ones.